The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Kathleen Taylor with the Nevada Women Business Center. We are a program of the Small Business Administration, the SBA. I'd like to welcome you to our webinar this morning, and thank you so much for taking the time to tune in with us. We have quite the topic, and it's basically a continuation of a conversation that we're in collaboration with this wonderful resource partner, Ludian LLC. And with that being said, we have a couple of guest speakers that are going to talk about intelligent mobility, its impact in Nevada, also from a broader perspective as well, some new trends, lots of good stuff in the tech industry. And we're really excited to collaborate with Ludian in this way in showcasing subject matter experts in various fields of technology and other types of sectors as well. With that, please use your question panel, your question box to forward me questions or comments for our speakers today. Also, you're going to receive a survey as well to give us your feedback, and we would really appreciate that. So today, it is my pleasure to introduce to you Ian Machen. He is the CEO of Ludian LLC, and also Dan Langford, and he is the founder and president of Tahoe Azul Consulting. Good morning, Ian and Dan. How are you today?
Good morning, Kathleen. Very well, thank you.
Good morning. Fantastic.
Excellent.
Another quality day at home.
Pardon me?
Another quality day at home.
Yes, I agree. And given this time, I'm so pleased that we do have this type of platform to still provide our services to the community to enhance entrepreneurship and economic growth and development through our webinar platform. So with that being said, Dan Langford of Tahoe Azul Consulting, could you tell us more about our subject today, intelligence mobility and its trends, just to kind of give us an introduction?
Sure. I guess intelligent mobility. Mobility is something that's been around for a very long time. People have been mobile for quite a while now. So what we're really talking about sort of modern mobility and what's happening in the world today. It's really based upon a convergence of a range of different technologies that have kind of come to the forefront over the last, less than 10 years almost. We're talking about things like data communications technologies and high-speed sort of network technologies, as well as different sensors that cities and different agencies are deploying. And of course, when we're talking about artificial intelligence, it's all about the computing power that's now available to us. So all of these different things have come together to I guess, form what has become modern mobility. So what I wanted to do is take a few minutes and sort of talk about more the history, specifically in Nevada,
Sure.
About how mobility is started coming to a head, and especially here in Las Vegas. So I'll kind of dive into that. I'm going to have to jump. A lot has happened over the last few years, so I'll be touching on some things very lightly and digging into a few others, which are probably hopefully a little more interesting. So I guess this all started, and it is really driven, the excitement around this has really been driven by the promise of autonomy. And Nevada back in 2011 was actually the first, I guess, government entity on the planet to have any legislation or regulations around autonomy. So yeah, that was implemented in early 2012, and of course, not surprisingly, Google was the first company on the planet to basically receive a driver's license for an autonomous vehicle. Back then, it was an autonomous Prius, so that happened in 2012. So as you can see, it goes back a few years, but in the scheme of things, is really new. Jumping ahead a little bit to 2015. 2015 is when the Ubers and Ubers and Lyfts of the world started coming into existence. Back in 2011, the TNCs, or the transportation network companies, just didn't exist. They weren't even thought of. So 2015 is when things really started kicking off. Things happening in Nevada around that time is, of course, that has significant impact on public transit. Also had a significant impact of those fleets coming in, especially on the taxi industry. About the same time, we had our first hint of autonomy sort of really locating in the state. Previously from 2011, we had Daimler doing different types of testing. As I mentioned, Google was in here. We had all sorts of sort of ad hoc efforts. But in 2015, we had Local Motors that were mostly well known for 3D printing vehicles. They were sort of had an autonomous shuttle at the time in collaboration with UNLV. They were working on a number of projects. And towards the end of 2015 is believe it or not, when Hyperloop started putting together their test track at the Apex Park north of Las Vegas. So this is really when things started coming together. And just because of the excitement around autonomy, our governor at the time, Brian Sandoval, launched the Nevada Center for Advanced Mobility in early 2016. And the other thing that was happening at the same time that sort of created what was to become intelligent mobility was our federal Department of Transportation issued their Smart City Challenge, which the city of Las Vegas was definitely one of the front runners, but unfortunately didn't win that project. It was an award of, I think, $50 million, and in the end it ended up being, I believe, well over $100 million to build, start putting together the smart city of the future. But what that did locally is it brought together all of the entities, our RTC, all of the different cities and the different agencies involved in transportation in Southern Nevada, to really start focusing on what was to become intelligent mobility and try and understand what was actually happening. At the same time, as a result of that, City of Las Vegas announced or declared that they have this innovation district, which was specifically set up for the testing and trialing and deployment of new technologies. So we found ourselves with an allocated chunk of the city to go do really cool things with. While all this is happening, a lot of these projects being government agencies, at the end of the day, it's all about satisfying the needs of our taxpayers and addressing different issues. So it was around mid-2016 that we realized that pedestrian safety was a challenge here in Las Vegas, and surprisingly, it really had nothing to do with the Strip and maybe inebriated tourists. It was more out in the suburbs with our very long, wide, high-speed arterial roads created quite a pedestrian safety issue. So it was about that time we issued a challenge to the world, basically. We put out an RFP looking for solutions that could help address pedestrian safety. And we weren't looking for things like, build a 6-foot high fence all around each of the roadways. It was more, the solutions had to be using technology. What really came back was there was no solution. There was no solution to the specific problem that Nevada was, or Southern Nevada was facing. One of them was close and it still is a work in development, but I'll speak more about that a little bit later. As an aside, though, we ended up with, I think, about 48 submissions from around the world. And we were specifically looking for solutions from overseas because we simply didn't have them locally. So the idea of bringing them in and launching those solutions here was really appealing. The two of the solutions that came through were not quite specifically on pedestrian safety, but they were exciting enough that a couple of our cities and the RTC since 2016 have worked on with these at the time, very young, very small companies, and develop them into real solutions. One is the company called Nexar, which has basically turns your cell phone into an artificial intelligence powered dash cam, which is useful for the drivers of vehicles, but it also provides an incredible amount of information for cities to understand what's happening on their roadways. project that's currently deployed today is they're using the Nexar dash cams to identify the location and activity around construction zones on our roadways. So that's really exciting and an ongoing project that's still up and running today. Another project that originated back then was with a company, another Israeli company called Waycare, and many people may have heard of Waycare as well. They at the time were promising to predict crashes, and they're working towards that, but they provided so much more value in the meantime as well. They ingest, basically what they do is ingest huge amounts of data from many sources, any being Waze and Google Maps through to your cell phone, through to fleet management technologies, to basically predict and understand what's happening on our roadways. And something they've been able to achieve is reducing the response time to traffic incidents. So the highway patrol and ambulances can get to incidents faster on our highways. So yeah, those type of projects are still up and running today and being expanded, and all originated back in 2016. So moving on from those, another thing we had, last thing we had happen in 2016 was.
Excuse me, Dan.
Yes.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
So going back to how you and your colleagues basically provided the RFP for companies to try to come up with some solution for pedestrian safety for Nevada, and you couldn't find any that basically could provide those services or come up with a solution. So with that, in that particular situation, do you feel that even though there was a lack of expertise or companies that could actually provide a solution, to that particular issue, do you think there's an opportunity for the growth and development of companies that can now come on board and add to the solution? So what I'm getting at is Nevada is really big on home growing its business and supporting local businesses, in addition to collaborating with businesses that are overseas as well. I'm all for that. Do you see any trends in locally, the local market, the tech and innovation market? Are there any progress or evolution to bring to the table companies that hopefully can evolve into providing that type of service to add to the solution?
So I guess I could speak more generally about, the opportunity that intelligent mobility and the disruption in transportation is.
Sure.
And then sort of focusing just on that project in particular. We realized we needed something fairly quickly, so it was, and economic development was top of the mind. So, attracting in these businesses and targeting these foreign companies was kind of a win as well, because you're bringing new talent and you're bringing a new company that can grow here in Nevada and sell their product across the country and the world from here. Having said that, to grow this locally, I mean, transportation as a whole is a huge opportunity for anyone who has relevant expertise and talent right now.
Yes.
There's things are moving so quickly. There's so many things that can be done. Again, particularly in those technology areas I discussed earlier, the sensors, the data communications, the artificial intelligence, machine learning are hot topics across the board.
Yes.
But there's still many transportation problems out there that need to be solved. Anyone from students nearing graduation in our university system through to existing companies who might want to reapply their expertise in an industry they may not have touched upon before. I mean, when we were going through that process, I did come across companies locally who had the expertise, but they, not surprisingly, were working in, say, the casino industry. They were using different video and analytics technologies to, track patrons or monitor what people were doing in activities in casinos. which you could, I'd like to say, relatively easily reapply to transportation and roadways. So there are those types of examples as well. It just comes down to, you know, whether they can spot the opportunity and find their niche to really make a difference there.
Well, I'm really pleased that we have local expertise right here with Ludian LLC and Ian, and also with you as well with your expertise to help facilitate that evolution and progress for small business development in the transportation technology mobility industry. So I'm really pleased of the work that both of you are doing in that particular industry. So thank you for that, Dan. Continue.
Sure, and I'll try and go quicker.
Okay.
It kind of thins out a little bit. 2016, 2017 were quite busy for Nevada. Just quickly, I mean, this gets more, this next project from Audi is interesting because it was the world's first vehicle to infrastructure technology that was actually deployed in a like a production vehicle. So again, the RTC, led by Tina Quigley at the time, were doing some really exciting things, which is unusual for a public agency, but they realized, you know, technology was moving so fast, they need to keep updated. So what Audi did with the RTC and another company called TTS as well, is they started taking the traffic signal information and providing it over the internet to vehicles to sort of connect what they call connected vehicles. So these Audis, I think they were 2017 year model Audis that came out. When you were driving around in Las Vegas, it told you when the lights were going to change. So you could be driving down the strip and it would tell you how many seconds before the light went green. So if you, for instance, had to deal with your makeup or, you know, a child in the back seat or something like that, you know, you had 90 seconds to do that. And it sounds really simple, but it was quite a groundbreaking project.
Absolutely.
So that was really exciting. So that kind of brought us in, and a lot of these projects were centered around or targeting things like CES. CES is kind of a big platform to showcase some of these solutions. So 2017 rolled around. There were a number of, again, there was the RTC actually put on a major event a couple of days before CES in 2017, the Go NV event, which happened again this year. And it was largely about, it was actually a result of the frustration. There was a lot of hype happening back then around autonomous vehicles and intelligent mobility, and a lot of it was just hot air. So this event was really about getting agencies from across the country and across the planet together to talk about what they were really doing and what impact they were really having on their local communities. So 2017, there were a number of new, again, connected vehicle type projects. The city of Las Vegas collaborated with the Geneva Alliance. Just quickly, the Geneva Alliance is a group of automakers and tier one automotive suppliers who work on the entertainment system in your vehicle. And they saw what we were doing in Las Vegas and realized that they wanted to collaborate and again provide more in-car information, alerting drivers as to what's happening on their roadways. And we were doing things like alerting drivers as to where their crosswalks or busy crosswalks were coming up, or where a bus had just offloaded pedestrians or people who were now becoming pedestrians. Because, you know, what often happens at a bus stop is, you know, everyone will get off the bus will move on,
right,
but then people will just cross the road right there, which creates, again, a pedestrian safety challenge.
Right.
So we're really focused on solving some of those problems.
Yeah. I have a question, Dan. So you mentioned RTC a few times. Could you share with the audience how that relationship was facilitated between you and your company, and also you, Ian, if you work with RTC here in Nevada? I'd appreciate your input as well as to how both of you facilitated that relationship with the local agency.
So I was actually working with the state of Nevada at the time. So, I mean, what I was charged with was basically fostering innovation in pretty much, you know, I guess the more active transportation agencies in the state. So, you know, I was very involved with a lot of the projects that the RTC was focusing on at that time. So that was kind of how I was involved there. Obviously, one of the main, it was kind of a balancing act, because one part of that function was focused on economic development, and the other part of the function was obviously maintaining safety and solving challenges that the RTC and our cities and other agencies were facing.
Yeah, I think just going on from what Dan said there, the attitude and the sort of like forward thinking of the agencies like the RTC, like City of Las Vegas and Clark County, I think it actually enables, it is still enabling now, and let's say back through the history of innovation in Nevada, the ability for those agencies to actually do that and take that on board, and sometimes take the risk of, let's look at this new approach, this new innovation, how to solve an issue. And some of the projects I've been working on now with the RTC, Southern Nevada, they are really, pushing cutting edge projects, and it's agencies, and I think, and this is why here in Vegas and the wider Nevada, that attitude actually helps springboard these innovative companies into the state.
Yes.
Because they have the mechanism to do that, and it's just show now where we are with innovation in the state, ahead of some of the other states and ahead of some parts of the world as well, which is absolutely fantastic for this region, and also then makes it very attractive to organizations, obviously like myself when I started here, and other innovative organizations that have actually set up within this within the state.
And speaking of innovation, Ian, could you share with the audience, and you as well, Dan, Ian, could you share with the audience a current project such as GOMED, GOMED?
Okay, yeah, thank you. So GOMED, it was in the medical district, and the project really was a grant, obviously won with the RTC City of Las Vegas, to operate autonomous shuttles in the, excuse me, in the medical district area, and it's, that's live operations of autonomous shuttles, again, not done anywhere else to this level, to a fully operating solution. Which actually included connected vehicles, so deployment of technology around the medical district to link in sort of things like pedestrian crossings into vehicles. So if a pedestrian crossing is active and we have pedestrians in the crosswalk, it alerts vehicles of that, well, not danger ahead, but alerts them to the point that there's people walking in the road ahead, and be alert. Obviously, they have traffic signals to advise them not to cross, but it's that additional warning in that area. Also, smart pedestrian shelters. So again, new innovation in technology around wayfinding and around information about when the next shuttle is due, when the next transit service is due. And really to look at these autonomous shuttles, we're talking fully autonomous, capability to take on passengers as well as wheelchair access, and running for 8 hours out of the full day to really promote local transportation within the medical district that doesn't exist now. So it's supplementing existing service with a fully autonomous shuttle. So for the GOMED project here, it's a real leap forward in a fully deployed solution within a city. Like I said, nowhere else has anything like this throughout the world. It's a really challenging project, but also a fantastic project to be engaged with from an innovative point of view. And again, it's the real foresight of the agencies here in Nevada that enabled that to happen. And it's in progress now, the project, and it's just something that is, from a personal point of view as well, really exciting to work on here, and the benefit it's going to give to the residents and the users of the medical district is fantastic.
Absolutely, and you bring up such a valid point, Ian, with safety in the medical industry, because let's just put ourselves into the into the mindset, if you will, of someone who's going to the hospital. It may be an emergency, and you're just focused on that person. Are they okay? maybe they have a surgery, maybe they've had, a sudden health challenge, maybe a heart attack. You're driving, you're trying to find a parking space. First of all, that's stressful within itself. So you may drive a little erratically in the parking lot. You get out of your car and you're just like focused, straightforward ahead. I want to get to my loved one as soon as possible in the hospital, and you're just walking, just very focused. You're not paying attention to crosswalk signals or whatever it is. So having that mindset, and then on the other side of the equation, having the technology to alert drivers, whether it's an actual person or it's on the autonomy side, or excuse me, am I saying that correctly, Ian? Autonomy or automatic? No.
Autonomy.
Autonomy. Okay, thank you. Or on the autonomy side, to alert them that there are people walking from the parking lot to the medical facility, and to take into account that within itself, it's like it's a protective mechanism that compensates for the emotional state that a person may be in that's really not paying attention to crossing the street or not. So I think that's absolutely phenomenal and very exciting that that technology is available to us. Excellent.
Yeah, it is fantastic, and like to have it here as well. Again, it's another one of those. I know Dan spoke to us about the history of how we've got to where we are in the state now,
Yes.
and it's a continuing journey. And again, it's really showing the opportunities and the growth here for projects like this, because it just keeps coming, which is amazing.
Absolutely. And with that being said, speaking of additional projects, Dan, would you like to share with the audience about aptiv, aptiv project?
Aptiv, yeah, and that's that's an ongoing project. I guess actually it started a very long time ago. So aptiv was previously named Delphi, a company who a lot of people know the name of. Rebranded themselves in 2018, and after many years of me trying to convince them to come to the state, they finally did. I think I was working with them for about 4 years, and they came every year to CES. But in 2018, we convinced them to move into town, and they've got a nice big building down near the airport. They deployed a fleet of autonomous BMW 5 Series vehicles, which I'm sure most people have seen on the strip at some point. They're usually black or white with the orange wheels. But it's one of the most significant fleets of autonomous vehicles on the planet. And that was also a result of some legislation that I helped author back in 2017 that enabled the full-blown operation of commercial autonomy in Nevada. And I think we were, again, one of the first states to do that. So if you can get your hands on an autonomous vehicle, you can go and deploy it commercially and make money off it here in Nevada. So that's what aptiv has done in conjunction with Lyft. And I guess I'll speak a little bit about just where where autonomy is right now. I think we've passed what you call the peak of the hype cycle. And it became apparent at CES early this year that we were entering this trough of disillusionment, specific to autonomy. But what I think that provides is an opportunity for cities and government agencies to actually start experimenting some more, take a breather, step back, and look at the different solutions that are out there. For instance, I'm currently working on, I can't go into details, their work is in progress, but it's become apparent that fleets play a very large role in the future of mobility going forward. I believe the idea of personal ownership of autonomous vehicles will not really happen. I believe everything will be fleet-based. So I'm currently working with a company right now, for example, that does damage detection. So if you've got an autonomous vehicle driving around, how do you know when someone runs into it or it scrapes up against something? It's supposed to never happen, but we still have humans on the road. So this is one particular solution that automatically checks for damage to vehicles, just as an example. Another company that I'm potentially working with actually uses cell phones to notify autonomous vehicles and the infrastructure and the city as to the location of people. Now, that might set off alarm bells in people's minds from a privacy perspective, but they're not concerned with who you are. They just want to alert vehicles to the fact there's a person potentially and predictably going to jump out in front of a vehicle or cross a roadway.
Right.
They don't need to know who you are to be able to do that. So I mean, it just gives you a taste of the type of projects we're looking at. But as I said, I think now's the time for cities and different agencies to start experimenting and working out what is going to fly and what's going to be useful to them and what is going to solve some of their problems and keep their population safe. Again, in the anticipation of autonomy becoming more substantive over the next few years.
Absolutely. And with that, we have a question from the audience. So thank you very much, Zachary, for your question. The question is, why is Nevada deploying in the medical district first? How does autonomous shuttles help the medical district during the current COVID crisis? Thank you for your question, Zachary. Ian, could you address that?
That's an interesting one, yes. So the reason for deployment in the localities now it was to service a requirement, service a need, and where deployment of and it's not obviously just around the autonomous shuttles, it's around all that technology within the medical district. It made it an ideal location because the medical district, excuse me, is growing. So the requirement for additional services in that area is growing. Obviously, to take people out of the cars and into more transit-oriented services, having a shuttle service around the district again leans into that and really supports that growth within that area. So, and again, with the other deployment of technology around connected vehicles, around pedestrian safety, around more information to transit users on availability of services, and from security point of view. In the current the crisis, obviously with social distancing, with autonomous shuttles as an example, if there is a person on board the shuttle, and typically in normal environment, it would stop and pick up additional passengers. So the system would be then pre-programmed to say, if I've got a person on board, do not stop and take that person to their next destination. Obviously, then we need to think about cleaning the vehicle during these times, keep it sanitized after each passenger's left, especially within that medical district area where you potentially have more of a concentration of people with infectious diseases.
Ian, I have a question for actually both you and Dan. So within your response, you mentioned the word, pre-programming. So with pre-programming, that means somewhere along the line, there was a person that theoretically or hypothetically programmed this system in order to detect the maximum amount of people that are on the shuttle. So with that being said, from a workforce development perspective, what are each of your opinions on the opportunity for the workforce to retool itself or evolve itself to acquire skills that will enable them to do tasks or jobs to service these types of AI systems? What are your thoughts on the growth and development and opportunity to totally revamp the workforce in some aspect to accommodate this opportunity with AI-driven jobs?
Sure. I mean, obviously, AI-driven vehicles are not going to be here tomorrow. So the path to full autonomy is going to be X number of years, maybe decades. So the natural transition is happening now. If we look at some of the, some of the training, some of the education that's available in AI, and it has been for, say, the last, I know people have been on AI courses over the last 20 years, when it was, a lot simpler then, of course. But, that education has grown, and working with the universities in industry as well, they are looking at that next generation, that forward-looking view of what the requirements are. So there will be a natural changeover to, like you said, that retooling of the workforce, but it will be a natural progression, because people in workforce now, maybe you've got 10 years left in the working career. There's not going to be too much impact and influence on them. And if I look about, I've got a son, 17, and a 12-year-old daughter, the focus on technology within their schooling now and college is, really prominent to enable the students of today and tomorrow to be able to be skilled up for that. Dan, anything to add?
Yeah, I just thought I'd give an example. I mean, this is already happening. I did quite a bit of work in the past with the Independent Crash Repair Association here in the United States, and they, they're already seeing this with, even the new vehicles coming out today. The level of sophistication is increasing, so they're having to reskill or upskill their existing staff because to become more aware of technology. And looking at government agencies I've been working with, people are used to working with bridges and concrete and steel, whereas all of a sudden they're having to learn about data communications and sensors and fiber networks. So that transition is already underway. Currently, because of the way autonomous vehicles are working, I think with the aptiv vehicles, there's 2 engineers in every vehicle. So the displacement of drivers, which a lot of people are worried about, is still a ways off. You're always going to need, well, not possibly in most cases, you're still going to need some type of customer service person in the vehicle anyway. That's what happened when the shuttle, the low-speed shuttle was deployed in downtown Las Vegas. I think it was 2018. There's always someone in the vehicle to talk to you, and this is a result that it comes from. People often don't realize what a driver actually does. They don't just drive the vehicle. All autonomy does right now is operate the vehicle as a function. But you think about what a bus driver does. He's customer service, he's security. There's a range of different functions. And when you think about sort of paratransit services, there's always going to need to be a person there to help the customers of different paratransit services.
Sure.
So, as far as jobs being displaced, I think there's going to be more work for everyone, at least in the short term.
Thank you, both of you, for your responses. And Dan, from a more broader perspective, could you share with the audience how intelligent mobility and tech companies could get started? Just with introducing some pilot programs, perhaps.
Yeah, and I guess this follows on from what I was saying before. I mean, the opportunity in transportation is, I don't know if I can quite call it a bubble, but the investment levels I see are really significant. I lived through I hate to say it, the .com bubble, so I know what that looked like, and I don't think this is quite the same. The opportunity in transportation isn't a short-term thing. Transportation, I think, last numbers I saw, accounts for 11% of the nation's GDP. Like, it's really important to absolutely every industry, and there is an opportunity there for everyone. Sometimes it isn't all technology. Working with different fleet companies looking at this challenge, some really simple stuff like cleaning vehicles all of a sudden becomes a challenge with autonomy, because there's no one in it to clean it out. So how do you know if the last rider dumped all their McDonald's in the back, right? There's some really basic stuff that still needs to happen. I think I was talking to aptiv. They said they clean their vehicles up to 3 times a day. And that's not something that normally happens. So, and I mean, I'm talking wash inside and out, clean it all out so it looks new for everyone. So, there are a lot of new challenges that are being also created by autonomy and intelligent mobility that need to be solved. And I'll bounce back to the investment levels just as an example. I mean, I see companies, startups with half a dozen staff raising, in excess of $8 to $10 million in their Series A round.
Wow.
So there's big chunks of cash being thrown at some of these solutions. So, if you can work at spot where the opportunity is, especially around fleets, and develop a good solution, the opportunities are out there.
That's excellent, excellent. And I'm so glad that we have the opportunity to interface and with the two of you who are our local subject matter experts on this. And we have another question, gentlemen. Moving forward, is there more opportunity for transit companies in the U.S. or is it more abroad? Ian, what are your thoughts on that?
So what was the last half of the question? Sorry, I missed the last part.
Oh, sure. So the full question is moving forward, is there more opportunity for transit companies in the U.S. or is it more opportunities abroad?
Oh gosh. Well, obviously the transit opportunities are global. So to say there's more in the US than abroad, probably no, because there's more roadway and more people outside the US than within the US. But different countries have different paths and different roads to innovation or to change, and different roads to the changes needed. So the demands can be slightly different depending on where the country is, the second, third world. So very difficult question to answer, but I think from a technology perspective, I'll put that from my side. I think the US and a handful of other developed countries would be where the opportunities are, but a heavy opportunity within the US for sure. Okay,
and I'm glad that we have opportunities here in Nevada as well to ride this wave in the evolution of technology. So thank you so much for your question. And here we are with closing remarks. This has been such a treat. I always learn so much when we have conversations about the tech industry and innovation. I find STEM fascinating. So with that being said, any last thoughts or remarks? How about Dan? We'll start with you.
Sure. Yeah, just quickly. I mean, as I said, I work primarily now with companies wanting to launch or pilot and test and deploy really new technologies in transportation across the board. So the time is now. I think it's a good opportunity. Transportation as a business opportunity isn't going away anytime soon. So now's the time to get started, but no need to hurry. Yeah, look for some exciting changes on our roadways and exciting new things in transportation coming down the pipeline.
Yes, definitely. Yes, and Ian, last remarks?
Sure. Well, I'd like to thank Dan for giving up his time today, joining us on our webinar. And Kathleen, thank you for hosting.
Sure.
And, to everybody out there, and in this current environment, guys, stay safe, please. Obviously, with our technology innovations we try to implement, we're looking at keeping people safe. But in this current environment, just please keep safe out there.
Absolutely. And with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, if you could please give us your feedback on with the survey that you're going to receive after the webinar, we would really appreciate it. And I'm so pleased to collaborate with Ludian LLC, with Ian Machen, to provide us with this webinar series to explore and also discover and also to provide awareness that right here in our community, we have some movers and shakers in the tech industry, specifically in intelligent mobility. So thank you so much, Ian, for your leadership and collaboration. Thank you so much, Dan Langford, for your expertise in this industry as well. And I look forward to continuing the conversation with our next webinar next month. So thank you both. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Kathleen.
A pleasure. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Absolutely. And with that being said, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us this morning for this webinar, looking at intelligence mobility in Nevada, some current trends, some pilot programs, and two dynamic subject matter experts here. If you have any questions about entrepreneur training or development, please give us a call at the Nevada Women's Business Center. We are a program with the Small Business Administration, the SBA. And with that being said, stay healthy and let's stay together. Thank you so much, Dan and Ian. Take care. Bye, everybody.
Yes.